Protesting Guatemalans burn parts of Congress. People in Burkina Faso are voting in an election marred with accusations of electoral fraud. And Saudi Arabia is hosting the G20 summit this weekend. Hello, welcome to teleSUR. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. Hundreds of Guatemalans have burnt down parts of the Congress building to protest the approval of the 2021 budget and demand the resignation of President Alejandro Yamatei. The incident came as about 7,000 people were demonstrating in front of the National Palace in Guatemala City against the budget. Protesters say the budget was negotiated and passed by legislators in secret, while the Central American country was distracted by the fallout of back-to-back hurricanes and the COVID-19 pandemic. Among various cuts, Guatemalans were angered because lawmakers approved $65,000 to pay for meals for themselves, but cut funding for coronavirus patients, education, and human rights agencies. Carrying the national flag and banners that said "No more corruption, Yamatei out," and "They messed with the wrong generation," the protesters filled the central square in Guatemala City in front of the old palace. According to media reports, security agents fired tear gas at protesters, and there were people who were injured. President Yamatei said he had been meeting with various groups to present changes to the budget.
I was walking and they grabbed me. I didn't do anything. I have my constitutional right to strike.
Estamos cansados.
We are tired. There is no other way to show our repudiation, how fed up we are. We are tired of so much abuse by the authorities.
And before the protests turned violent, Guatemala's Vice President Guillermo Castillo urged President Yamatei to resign over his approval of the almost $13 billion budget, the largest in the country's history. Yamatei had not responded publicly to that proposal, and Castillo did not share the president's reaction to his proposal, but said he would not resign alone.
Unfortunately, we had not success in today's meeting, and I would therefore like to make my approach very clear to the President. It is in the country's interest that we both tender our resignations, him as President and I as Vice President of the Republic. But let's do it together. I have made it very clear to the President that things are not right on many government issues, and the decisions that have been taken I don't agree with. I have not been consulted on them because of the lack of communication we have with the President. This is also due to a citizen demand. We have been told that things are not as people hope.
The Mexican Senate has approved a landmark recreational cannabis legalization bill in a landslide vote. Lawmakers are now rushing to secure final approval before the end of the current congressional session in December. The legislation would let users carry up to 28 grams and grow as many as 4 plants at home. Sales to adults in authorized businesses would be allowed, provided the product abides by maximum levels of psychoactive ingredients. Lawmakers in favor of the bill said it will also support indigenous communities, as they will no longer have to be part of an illegal cannabis market. But the use of cannabis will continue to be banned in public spaces if there are minors, and also in a 500-meter radius of schools, shopping centers, parks, and government buildings. Another former FARC combatant has been murdered in Colombia. Jairo Lopez was gunned down in Putumayo in the southwest region of the country on Friday. This has pushed the cumulative number of former guerrilla members killed since the signing of the 2016 peace agreements to 242. As Brazilians prepare to mark Black Awareness Day on Friday, video circulated on social media of a black man being beaten by security guards at a supermarket in the city of Porto Alegre, sparking outrage. According to reports, emergency services attempted to resuscitate 40-year-old João Alberto Silveira Freitas at the scene, but he was already dead after being beaten by 2 white security guards, one of whom was an off-duty cop. A short video clip showed one guard restraining him outside the doors of a Carrefour supermarket, while the other inflicted repeated blows to his face. Other clips showed a guard kneeling on top of Frita's back. Dozens of protesters demonstrated in Sao Paulo on Friday morning, chanting Black Lives Matter. This as the incident bore similarities to the murder of George Floyd in the United States. The security guards involved have been arrested on charges of aggravated homicide. And protests have also broken out in the cities of Belo Horizonte and Rio de Janeiro. In Rio, demonstrators used tires to block the entrance of a Carrefour store and stuffed them with sunflowers. Protesters chanted and demanded justice for all those killed by police in the country.
Being black in Brazil means you have your humanity stolen. You have all your rights stolen. You don't have the opportunity to come and go in peace. You have the security system designed to have you as the accused. Even when you are the victim, you are the target of any bullet that circulates in this city. There is no bullet lost when it hits a black body.
We have more stories coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back. Millions of people in Burkina Faso are voting in an election marked with accusations of electoral fraud. President Roch Marc Christian Kaboré is expected to win re-election. The opposition has threatened to reject the results over what they called a huge operation orchestrated by those in power to carry out massive fraud. More than 6.5 million people will be able to vote, but the turnout is expected to be much lower due to an armed insurgency linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. This has forced the Electoral Commission to close polling stations in the north and eastern regions of the country.
All these facts challenge us. This is why we decided yesterday to file a complaint with the prosecutor of Faso. But we are well aware of the slowness of our judicial institutions. What we want is not to wait 2 or 3 weeks after the elections for a decision. We want it to be decided now, and it is you, Burkinabes, and your vigilance that will help us to do that.
Dozens of protesters have rallied in the Angolan capital, Luanda, demanding an end to government corruption and police violence. They have accused the government of failing to take decisive action against public officials accused of engaging in corrupt practices. They also denounced the unwillingness to punish police officers who assaulted protesters last month.
The demonstrations will not stop in Luanda. That's to say that on December 10th, there will be another, and we invite all those people who are at home, young scientists, young people who know that the country is not in good shape to show up on December 10th.
Uganda's opposition presidential candidate Robert Kyagulanyi, aka Bobby Wine, has condemned the violent clashes between security forces and his supporters that left at least 37 people dead. The 37 died during 2 days of protests that were sparked by Wine's arrest on Wednesday ahead of a political rally in the run-up to the January 14th election. The musician turned politician appeared in court on Friday for allegedly violating coronavirus measures at his rallies. Speaking after the court hearing, he accused President Yoweri Museveni of using COVID-19 restrictions to stop political opponents from campaigning.
Museveni and these brutal people are on their way out. They have failed to account for the 35 years they've been in power. And now all they're left with is murder innocent people. Shame on them. He's facing a generation which is both hungry and angry. A generation which is resolved to stop at nothing to get their freedom. A generation which has said in the past and continue to say, we are not your slaves.
Saudi Arabia is hosting the G20 summit this weekend with a virtual forum dominated by efforts to tackle the coronavirus pandemic and the worst global recession in decades. World leaders have gathered virtually as international efforts intensify for a large-scale rollout of coronavirus vaccines after a breakthrough in trials. It also comes as calls grow for G20 nations to plug a $4.5 billion funding shortfall. Saudi Arabia's King Salman presides over the meeting, and climate change is expected to be among the issues topping the agenda. According to organizers, G20 nations have contributed with more than $21 billion to combat the pandemic, which has infected 56 million people globally and left 1.3 million dead. And they have also injected $11 trillion to safeguard the affected world economy. Various world leaders have prepared video messages addressed to the G20 summit in Riyadh. Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez has announced that his country purchased millions of doses of COVID-19 vaccines to protect 10% of the population.
Argentina actively engaged in the COVAX mechanism of the COVID-19 Access Accelerator and has already made the upfront payment for the purchase of 9 million doses of vaccines to cover 10% of the population. In this regard, Phase 3 of the clinical trials of 3 vaccine candidates are being developed in our country. And we will also produce the vaccine developed by the University of Oxford, which will be distributed equitably from 150 to 200 million doses to Latin American countries.
Meanwhile, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has pleaded for free and universally available vaccines and warns about excessive lockdowns as he addressed the G20 virtual summit.
Health is a fundamental human right that the state must guarantee. Medical care, vaccines, and medicines must be free and universally available. Guarantee freedom in all circumstances and abandon the temptation to impose authoritarian measures such as excessive lockdowns or curfews. The economic rescue must be done from the bottom up, first helping the poor.
In his address to the G20 summit, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa called on developed nations to assist African countries to rebuild their economies that were negatively affected by the coronavirus pandemic and low oil prices.
We look to the G20, international partners, and the international finance institutions to work with African countries to help them rebuild their economies. The African Union has proposed several measures, including debt relief in the form of interest payment waivers and deferred payments.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has called on G20 leaders to support the World Health Organization and calls for vaccines to be made available and affordable for all countries in order to contain the pandemic.
In order to halt the pandemic, every country needs to have access to and be able to afford the vaccine. The funds pledged so far are not enough to achieve this. I therefore appeal to you all to support this important initiative. To this end, we need to sustainably strengthen the World Health Organization. We need reliable funding, better cooperation, greater independence. And the G20 can provide important, indeed crucial support in this area. If we stand together across the globe, we can control and overcome the virus and its impact. It is worth redoubling our efforts to achieve this.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us again. Thousands of Israelis took to the streets on Saturday night to continue months of protests demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Braving cold, wet weather, several thousand people gathered outside Netanyahu's official residence in Jerusalem. Some protesters carried makeshift submarines, referring to one of Netanyahu's graft scandals which is connected to the purchase of warships and submarines from a German conglomerate. The Prime Minister faces corruption charges, and protesters also accuse him of mishandling the coronavirus crisis. Troops from Azerbaijan have entered a district bordering Nagorno-Karabakh that was previously home to Armenian separatists as part of a Russian-brokered deal to end weeks of fighting in the region. Troops on Friday moved into the district of Agdam, one of 3 to be ceded. As part of last week's peace deal, Armenia agreed to return some 15 to 20% of the Nagorno-Karabakh territory captured by Azerbaijan in recent fighting, including the historical town of Shusha. Armenia will also hand over the Kalbajar district, wedged between Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia, on November 25th, and the Lachin district by December 1st. Clashes between Azerbaijan's forces and Armenian separatists broke out in late September in the Nagorno-Karabakh region. The fighting lasted 6 weeks, leaving thousands dead and displaced.
Do you think it's easy to be a martyr? It is difficult. The war is over. The agreement was signed. Excellent. Very good. Because my son is in the town of Kojavent in Nagorno-Karabakh now. He's still there.
I cried and I was happy. I was crying tears of joy. I hope the other districts will be returned. We are all calm now. We are all happy.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has expressed gratitude to Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan for brokering the Nagorno-Karabakh ceasefire.
The Azerbaijani army has achieved a brilliant military victory, and we move on to the plan of political settlement. I would like to express my gratitude to you, as well as the leadership of Russia, President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, for his active personal participation in the preparation and adoption of this important political document. We also welcome the active course of negotiations between the Russian Federation and Turkey on the establishment of a ceasefire monitoring center in Azerbaijan.
Meanwhile, in Armenia, several thousand people have gathered again in the capital, Yerevan, to call for the resignation of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and to voice their opposition to a deal with Azerbaijan over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. The Armenian police had detained dozens of protesters on Friday at a similar rally in Yerevan, where demonstrators formed a human chain and blocked major roads. The agreement ended military action and restored relative calm to the breakaway territory, internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but populated and, until recently, fully controlled by ethnic Armenians.
Return from the military positions in Nagorno-Karabakh 3 days ago. We defended the positions and will defend them to the end. These traitors sold the country. Soon our platoon of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation will return from the Nagorno-Karabakh. Some the pro-Pashinyan keep saying the soldiers are with us. But soon it will become clear who is with whom.
Today we gather here to demand the resignation of the traitor Nikol Pashinyan. A commander-in-chief who has been defeated has no right to remain at the helm of the country.
Georgia has held runoff elections in several constituencies in a vote boycotted by the opposition. All of the country's opposition parties have staged mass protests after claiming the October 31st parliamentary elections were rigged. They want snap polls, a demand the ruling Georgian Dream Party has rejected. The government won 48% of the votes against 46% for opposition parties, in a proportional ballot that decided 120 of the legislative 150 seats. Opposition candidates have said they will renounce their mandates.
There is no place for people who do not know how to behave in a governmental post. That is why there is an election process. Awareness of the population must be increased so that people know whom to vote for. Georgia will not succeed until party hegemony is overridden.
What I see today is politicians purring their own interests about the interests of the country. and they should be stopped.
In the United States, around 74 endangered sea turtles that became stranded on Cape Cod have been airlifted to rescue centers. Each fall at Cape Cod Bay in Massachusetts, hundreds of endangered sea turtles wash ashore hypothermic from the cold ocean temperatures, leading to the largest sea turtle stranding event in the world. The organization called Turtles Fly 2 and its volunteers have loaded up a record-breaking 74 sea turtles to be flown on a single private aircraft to rehabilitation centers along the eastern seaboard. This will take place before being released into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Most of the turtles are Kemp's ridley, the smallest and most endangered species in the world.
You couldn't write a more horrifying script for everything, really. I mean, this is what, you know, in a good year we could deal with it and you could bring in more people, and now you can't. So now we have to deal with it. Each one of us in our own way has to find the time to recover from being out there, you know, all of the shifts and all of the walking, all of the lifting, and then get ready for the next tide. And make sure we have the infrastructure and that we're able to move turtles around and get that all done.
Once you save one, it's, you know, you're just hooked. I mean, I find that my fellow volunteers, they'll do just about anything. You know, like, okay, it's 5 degrees out with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. Can you go out at 3 a.m.? You know, and they're like, yeah. So it's for the turtles. You know, we love them.
Organizers for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar say they are optimistic for the upcoming sports event, despite the ongoing pandemic. According to the organizing committee, 90% of the infrastructure for the event is complete. The tournament will feature 8 stadiums, with construction on 3 of them completed. Qatar will be the first Middle East and Arab-majority country to host the football competition. But the committee has also acknowledged that the COVID-19 pandemic has and will present numerous challenges, but they hope to be able to safely welcome as many visitors as possible.
We still have 2 years until Qatar's FIFA World Cup kicks off, and we're optimistic that the first ball will be kicked in that new era, where we will all call the post-COVID world. Now, since COVID-19 was first reported in Qatar in March, the virus has presented us with numerous challenges that we have faced head-on. These include protecting the welfare of workers, building our infrastructure, creating a safe environment to play competitive sports, and adjusting our plans where necessary to ensure that we're ready for all scenarios ahead of 2022.
And with that, we end this news brief. But remember, you can read all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media. Until next time.